Hi everyone, and once again welcome back to Hobby World for another amazing episode, the second part of my full-scale 3D printed model of Moxxi from Borderlands. In the first episode we built this amazing loot crate the model is going to lean her foot against, and in this episode we're going to take everything a step further as I'm starting to work on the body itself, her head and all that other stuff down there in the box. When I 3D printed all of these parts for Moxxi, I decided to split the model up into lesser pieces. There are two reasons for this. First of all, I could eliminate a lot of the supports by simply taking a part like this, slicing it up in between there, and then aligning it like this on the print bed, thereby eliminating the use of supports. And supports require a crazy amount of cleanup afterwards. So I have eliminated that part of the process, thereby saving time and getting a much cleaner and nicer print. The second positive feature of splitting up the model is that it can be printed on smaller printers. So the only thing you need to remember when doing this is that you need to create these holes for alignment pins. So I've created these pins that fit inside these holes. I dug these holes in a 3D modeling software that's called Mesh Mixer, while I also cut up the pieces. And as you can see, these two parts will now fit perfectly against each other. There will still be this gap, and I need to remove that. And to do that, I will clean up the edge. After the edge has been cleaned, I'm going to add filler down in that hole and then a bit of sandpaper. And then this part is basically ready for painting after I have smoothed all the layer lines down. So in this episode, I'm going to prepare all of these parts. I'm going to assemble everything until I get to the point where it's not my own alignment pins that fit in there, but only the ones that was pre-made by the 3D designer, because these are natural points of the model where it shifts to some other colors. So I could, for example, put all of this together, remove that line here, get that filled up, and then I could paint this stuff and put it aside, because the part that goes on top is this part, and that has a completely different color. So by getting the bottom one ready first, I can do a lot of paint work here without risking getting paint on something else. So by painting this in smaller stages, I'll get a much cleaner and nicer result when the model is finished. When I'm going to clean this model up, I'm going to use a tool like this, because this is perfect for removing that edge, that my elephant foot you call it, that has been created when 3D printed the model. So I'm simply going to run this along the edge of the assembly line here, getting all of this stuff removed, and when everything's removed I can align the two pieces like this, and it's much easier to add some filler into the gap because now there isn't an edge sticking out. So that's basically what this part 2 video about the Moxxi project is about, but this is the video where everything will start to look really nice, because the model will actually begin to look finished in these smaller parts. So it's a really important step, because the better I do the work here, the cleaner and nicer assemblies I make, the better the final result will be. And as I've said many times before, and unfortunately not always followed, you need to take your good time when building a project or working on a project like this. So this time I actually have the possibility of doing that, because I have a deadline, and that's 2024. So I just need to finish this, hopefully before Christmas, but by New Year would be just fine. So this is an amazing project. It's going to look incredible, just like the good old models I have here behind me, and hopefully just a bit better. I am finally ready to assemble the model of Moxxi herself. All of the parts are laying here in front of me on the table, and this is going to be incredible. When all of these are assembled, I can start painting them. But before that, I need to put everything together. And to do that, I'm going to need a lot of super glue, and I'm going to need some baking powder and some gloves. The gloves are an important part of this, unless you want to get yourself stuck on all of this stuff here. But just take a look at this. This is actually incredible. A scale 1:1 model of Moxxi from Borderlands laying right here on the table. And this is of course excluding the loot crate I made in my last episode. So let's get all of this stuff assembled. just take a quick look at all of the pieces here after I've assembled everything. This is beginning to look quite nice. There are actually a lot of pieces in one of these full-scale 3D printed models, and remember that this also has the loot crate. But this is an incredible model. Right now I just need to clean up all of the pieces. You can see I PLA welded it right here. That also removed the tiny gap that was between the pieces, and it made sure that the assembly is even stronger than before. And I'm really careful with that because these full-scale 3D printed models like the 3 over here, they are so huge and they are so heavy that they require additional strength. So I wouldn't like any glue pieces to fall apart and the whole model just broke down and fell to the ground. That would be terrible. So I'm always really careful that everything is very neatly assembled and there is a lot of strength in the pieces. So yeah, looking quite good. Lots of parts here. Well, that's about it for this time. We'll probably have to wrap this project up right here. This took a bit longer than I had expected, but all of these parts are ready for painting now. I still need to do a bit of work before I can apply the actual paint. If we take a part like this, for example, we can see that I have PLA welded all of the pieces. So everything has been glued using super glue and baking powder, and after that I PLA welded it and smoothed out the surface using a hot soldering iron. So this looks pretty good, but there will be some imperfections like this area here. I will need to sand down. I'm also going to use a hot air gun to remove all of those small strings that are here remaining from the printing process. That is the part that is called stringing, and a hot air gun is a really useful tool for removing those. But you need to be careful because it can warp and twist the parts. It's not that big of a deal with these large pieces here, but smaller miniatures, that will be a problem. But the next step right now is to sand this down, the hot air gun, and then I'm going to spray paint all of these parts with a lot of coats of spray to smoothen out all of the layer lines that are everywhere because this is 3D printed. And when all of the layer lines have been smoothened out using several coats of spray paint, spray filler, then I can start painting the pieces. And luckily all of these pieces connect really well together as they have these pins here that has been pre-made, and everything will just fit perfectly like this. So in this case I can paint up each individual piece like this. This is mostly skin, so I can paint this. It isn't that large, so I can move around and work on it and then get everything painted perfectly, and then as the final stage I can attach everything together. So this is going to be a lot easier to paint than the problems I had with that model. I completely assembled and then painted. Speaking about removing layer lines, just as a short note here, the layer lines can also be removed by applying resin. You know, that liquid stuff you use for some 3D printers. It cures using UV light, and it can create a really smooth top on these parts. But the problem with it is that it's kind of toxic. Unless it's hardened, then it isn't a problem, but personally I don't like working with it. So for this model I'm going to test out if I can actually get everything filled up using spray filler, as that will be, I think it will going to be a bit more expensive than using the resin, but it's a lot less work, and if you're careful and you don't get any droplets rolling down over the models, then it should provide a really nice result. So really interesting seeing how that turns out. But that's all for the next video. So until then, I really hope you've enjoyed watching this episode, enjoyed seeing me assemble all of these pieces. It was kind of a boring video, to be quite honest, but the fun begins now, because when I'm starting painting all of this, it's going to look incredible, because this is a really colorful model. So it has all the things that's required to becoming a great full-scale 3D printed model. So if you'd like to watch the next episode, remember to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comments, feedback, always appreciated. So just fire away down in the comment section. And thank you all for watching, and have a great day.